So to all of this, more is coming to light this morning about the married couple who killed 14 people in San Bernardino, California last week. Investigators say Saeed Farouk first talked about staging an attack 3 years ago with his friend and neighbor Enrique Marquez, but got cold feet. Marquez has been talking extensively to federal authorities over the last few days, saying that he knew Farouk had radical beliefs, but he knew nothing about the attack on the Inland Regional Center. Multiple sources tell NBC News that Farouk and his wife, Tashfeen Malik, left behind evidence that they were contemplating an attack on other targets. Officials say smashed phones recovered from Farouk's home contained photos of local buildings, including a high school. Testifying on Capitol Hill yesterday, FBI Director James Comey said both Farouk and Malik were radicalized for years.
San Bernardino involved two killers who were radicalized for quite a long time before their attack. They were actually radicalized before they started courting or dating each other online. As early as the end of 2013, they were talking to each other about jihad and martyrdom before they became engaged and then married and lived together in the United States.
Officials said yesterday they did not know that Malik was committed to jihad when she applied for a fiancé visa and came to the United States.
So
that's, I think, a little bit problematic when we're looking at our visa process, probably. Right? I mean, I know I'm going to be like...
No, just enunciate it. What are you saying?
Well, I'm just saying that this is an issue that happened, that somebody came here and wreaked havoc on our society.
Well, the question...
I'm not backing Donald Trump's concept. I'm just saying...
So what you're saying is that we've had all of these arguments about the visa programs being inadequate, and Donald Trump saying keep Muslims out until we know who's coming in. And here is a prime example of a case where somebody was radicalized,
came over.
a jihadist, even before they applied for the visa program, and then got admitted in the United States visa program, right?
It's really, it's incredibly disturbing.
But what's interesting about it is that visa program involves a fair amount of work. You don't just walk in and get handed a visa. You get fingerprinted, you get investigated, there are background checks. There are only about 5,000 of them given out a year. I think about 500 to Pakistanis. And so we went through all, the consular people went through all the appropriate steps and nonetheless concluded that she should be here.
And 14 Americans are dead because the system is not great. You know, I mean, just a reality for a lot of people saying this program let someone in who killed 14 Americans.
And I do think that a lot of Americans, even if they oppose the overall ban, may agree. I think that 66% would be even higher if it was like a Ted Cruz approach, which is don't look at their religion, but look at the war-torn areas. If they're coming from Syria, if they're coming from Iraq, if they're coming from Yemen, if they're coming from places,
this is like the
Saudi
debate
Arabia,
over the refugee program.
that have been radicalized, you're going to have to amp up the process, because this process obviously was woefully inadequate.
You have Republicans denouncing and, you know, saying that the refugee program needs to be stopped temporarily, right? Because, you know, we're not sure if the process, the vetting process, is good enough for these refugees, these poor people who have no home, who need help desperately.
Right.
But what's interesting about it, again, Joe, is it's not when you say the process was broken, there was a process. There was a robust process. It wasn't like just going to the post office and buying a postage stamp. And the fact that it failed does raise some really important questions about how you do keep people like this out.
So aren't you saying then that the visa, are you saying something that might be in line with Donald Trump's policy?
Well, I'm certainly not saying we should ban all Muslims, and I'm not even saying we should ban all Muslims from this area, but I think this whole question has to be looked at a lot more carefully.
When she did her interview, no red flags were raised. She knew everything.
She had multiple interviews.
She knew everything about Farouk. She could answer questions. She breezed through the interviews successfully, so then there were no follow-ups about her jihadist leanings.
So I'm challenging you all. I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, what do you want?
What are you saying? Say what you're saying.
I'm saying that the visa process obviously has holes. And You know, I'm not sure Donald Trump's concept is good for our country.
Obviously, it has holes. The 9/11 terrorists were here legally,
so what do we do about it? Because we just had like a slaughter in our country, and now children are traumatized across our country. They feel ISIS is here, and most of us feel like it's going to happen again. So someone tell me something better than what Donald Trump is saying. And there's got to be something better, because everybody has been sitting here for days just lambasting him, including me, because I don't agree with it. But somebody needs a better idea.
Well, we have to invest in a system that will keep out people that plan to do harm to the United States. I'm sure it's underfunded. I'm sure part of the problem is there aren't enough people screening people to come into the United States. We're going to have to invest in that as a country, because we're not going to close our border.
Well, I think you also, and
somebody have a better idea.
Something that I suggested to Donald Trump, you don't focus on 100% of the Muslims, but focus on people that are coming in from war-torn areas where they're more likely to be radicalized. Syria's at the top of that list. But when they come here, Willie, also it requires a second step. I'm sorry, if you're here on a visa and you're from an area that we're concerned about, we're going to have to amp up surveillance. And it's going to have to be nonstop surveillance. And we're going to have to fund. I mean, yeah, I know people love to spend billions and billions of dollars on one airplane that a military contractor makes. We're going to have to spend that money on surveillance for people that are in this country that may be suspicious. Because guess what? They were going to a school next, according to these reports.
Also better intelligence and better intelligence sharing, because she was not in any security database. They checked all their databases. They went through all the right steps, what you would do. She just wasn't on any list. There was no way for them to know that she should not have been in this country. So then you ask, now that she's in, what do you do about the people?
But the problem with saying war-torn areas is how many people like this could be in France or Belgium?
Well, it's like police
they're
profiling.
Not going to come directly from a war-torn area. And ISIS, I mean, this is not the most sophisticated thing in the world, but figuring out to marry somebody and come with a fiancé
sophisticated.
visa.
You know, the thing is,
compared to hijacking a plane.
And they were practicing at gun ranges in the Los Angeles area. How many young Pakistani women go practice at gun ranges?
By the way, in her traditional garb.
Should she be arrested for that?
No, but should somebody have said there's a woman in traditional? Well,
but ask, check, yeah.
But that's dicey too.
That's dicey. You guys are.
Call in everyone you think looks suspicious who's at a gun range. I mean, you could do that with a lot of people who are not Muslim, right? At a gun range.
See, all I'm just saying is I've been watching coverage for the past 3 days of Donald Trump getting torn to shreds. And it's sort of like the Republicans going after Obamacare, whatever. Come up with a better idea. Look at what happened. This visa process did not prevent the worst attack on this country.
Well, the visa process, obviously, Sam, if you talk to most Americans today, needs to be toughened up. And and there is obviously, though, a middle ground between banning all Muslims from coming to the United States and keeping the status quo. But there is no doubt we're going to have to do things that make us uncomfortable. It may not appear to be Marcus of Queensberry rules that we're playing by anymore, but we live in a new world, and we're going to have to be tough, and some things that we do may actually smack of profiling.
Okay, well, the visa issue is a huge problem that everyone on Capitol Hill now recognizes. And of course, the issue of surveillance is contentious, but we probably will ramp it up. The problem with Donald Trump's proposal is that it actually doesn't solve a problem. It makes one worse.
I agree.
When you start banning all Muslims coming into this country, you end up facilitating the radicalization because you play into an ISIS-led propaganda tool.
I think we all agree with that.
So then that's the difference. But Mika's asking about the difference between one and X and Y, and that's the big difference.
No, what she said and what I just said was there has to be a middle ground between Donald Trump's proposal and the status quo.
Everybody, instead of saying what's wrong with Donald Trump's proposal, because you all have said it on a loop for 3 days straight, okay? On a loop. That somebody come up with a different concept, a better one. And if you don't have one...
But there are no foolproof concepts. There are no foolproof concepts.
But the status quo is not acceptable. Certainly not to most Americans.
Look at what we got here.
Can I just tell you one thing? Half of the jihadi attacks since 2001 were committed by men born in the United States. 5 were committed by people who are naturalized.
Can you hold that right there?
5 were committed by people who were naturalized citizens, and 2 were committed by people who are here on green cards. So this is a very broad problem that affects people who get radicalized or become radicals for any number of reasons under any set of circumstances.
So hold the picture up again. And if you're a police officer, you're going to look at the people and you're going to profile the people.
These are attacks in the United States or around the world?
In the United States.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know what profile actually fits all those people. But obviously,
I like this conversation because we're all a little stumped.
Police officers do. I mean, listen, we're stumped. Law enforcement officers, though, I suspect, if you ask them what they needed, and if you ask the CIA what they needed, and if you ask the intel agencies what they needed, they could tell you very quickly what they needed. The question is whether we have the stomach to do what it takes to win the war on terror against ISIS.
All right, coming up on Morning Joe, Joe's extended conversation with presidential candidate Ted Cruz. Among the many topics on the table, the senator's strategy against ISIS and his approach to Donald Trump. Also, former head of Homeland Security Tom Ridge, the Weekly Standard's Bill Kristol, and Washington Post reporter Bob Costa. Up